for so long.
Thank you.
Because it is bittersweet, that's for sure. But anyway, everything is in your little booklet, so let's hand them out.
How do you get one?
You can't
Oh,
have
they're
one.
coming.
We'll share.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, it might be just enough. It might be just enough, yeah.
I got it.
You, sir?
You don't want it, you don't need this to fill in the blanks?
Fill in the blanks for you.
I wish.
I have two left.
Oh, no, it's
Did you get one? Yeah. Oh, good, thank you. Thank you all for coming. Your reports are all in here, so we're not gonna read them. We're just gonna have fun. As everybody knows me, they knows that's what I like to do. The one thing I do have to talk to you about is a proposed amendment to the bylaws that the Board of Directors came up with. We wanted to remove the manager of the Alonzo Booth Blacksmith Shop as a member of the Board of Directors. Because that was really done for Dick Mancello. And we haven't had a blacksmith that's willing to go back on that. So we decided rather than put them in that position, we can always make them a director if they want to be a director. So we do have to vote on that, Diane, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Could you do that, please? I've been waiting, trying to wait for you, but.
So, we have proposed an amendment to the bylaws of the Bourne Society for Historic Preservation, and as you know, any change to the bylaws does need to be voted on by the membership. Change is to remove the manager of the Alonzo Booth Blacksmith Shop as a member of the Board of Directors. This is not to eliminate the position, but it's only to eliminate it being a Board of Directors position.
Somebody like to make a motion to do that?
So moved.
Secondly.
All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. I had to give a letter of resignation today, which I handed to Joan as secretary. But I don't think it's necessary to read that. If you want to go ahead. It's not an easy thing to write. A lot of years.
Well, luckily Louise has beautiful handwriting.
Yes, she does.
John O'Brien, Secretary of the SHP, the board, please, the board of directors, please accept my resignation as president as of today, June 29, 2025. We will elect a new president today. It is with mixed emotions that I resign. When I took the office again last year, I said I would decide this year, but at this time, I believe it is. I will now serve as past president. Thank you for your support all these years. Sincerely, Louise Ennis.
Thank you, everybody.
I'll be serving as a reservation.
No, you can't go.
We are very, very lucky, because we did have somebody who stepped forward and said they would fill in, so. Diane?
Report of the nominating committee. We never thought we'd get to the point of Louise stepping down, but she is. So, we nominate the following candidates for election. For terms expiring in 2026, as president, Emily Martin. Secretary, Deborah Burgess. And Louise will be staying on the board as past president. We have a vacant director's position expiring in 2026. And then Peg Wilson will fill the unexpired term of Dave Dimmick, whose term will expire in 2027. And terms expiring in 2028, returning to the board, Joan O'Brien and William Town. And joining our board will be Margot Jenkins. So we ask that,
Are there any nominations from the floor?
Is there a motion?
Can I ever make a, what are we making a motion for? Just on the,
Yes, to elect the candidate.
would somebody like to make a motion to accept the nominating committee's recommendations?
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you so much, Emily, for coming forward. I think all of you know Emily, she's been around a while, so. Okay. Take the reports home with you and you can read to your heart's content. Because we're gonna have fun. Everybody's gonna party, right? We'd like, sorry, before we get to that part, we'd like to hear from you.
Oh, boy.
All right. Mavis has been wonderful about doing, whatever we ask her to do, she's there. And she's been a great member, and we are interested in helping her in any way we can. So, please, Mavis Robertson.
I was hoping, based on this agenda, I would have a little time to get my thoughts pulled together. But I'll just have to be here as I am. This is the second time I've spoken to this group in a formal way at an annual meeting. Since the last time I've joined, and I'm a proud member of the preservation group, I feel a little emotional being here on this day as we say goodbye to an incredible president and somebody who has taken this group through the span of years, not just her recent presidency, but what she contributed even longer ago, with originally getting this, Briggs-McDermott house up and running. I'm not the expert on the Society for Historic Preservation or the Briggs-McDermott house, so I don't want to speak to that, because there are those in the room who are much more knowledgeable than I am. And these are not the words I was planning on saying, but as I'm here in the presence of Louise, I feel like I must speak to my love and respect of Louise. As I stumbled into the Bourne historical community, I showed up I needed a little part-time job at the historical center. And as new people come into places, they stumble and make mistakes, and sometimes our eagerness, we can cross paths with people and hurt other people's feelings, and I know I made all those mistakes and I made all those stumbles. And Louise, in particular, as the president of our sister organization, has always been there to very kindly and very wisely help lead me in the right direction. And so Louise is an important part of my love for this town's history. What she has done personally for the organization is huge, but what she has done personally for me is also huge. And so, Louise, I just join in all of the appreciation and thanks for everything that you've done for us
Really nice.
individually in this room. So, thank you. I have to do that. And when Louise let me know she was stepping down, I did not believe it, by the way, because I feel like I've been hearing that she's ready to pass it along. And from my own experience, the role somebody who's a powerful president who steps down to serve as a immediate past president, it's such a valuable mentoring role on my board. I'm very appreciative to have Diane Flynn, who's our immediate past president, still very active and still guiding me. So I know you folks are not losing Louise. She's still gonna be here, just with a little less pressure. And there was a mystery about who it was gonna be. I didn't know until I showed up and read Emily Martin's name on this agenda. So I'm so thrilled. Congratulations, Emily. And another person who's been one of those little shining lights, part of many things in town. Whenever I see Emily, I give a smile and get a smile, and I can't wait to work with you more within this historical town. So,
I look forward to that too.
yes. So I came to just give a little update as to where we are with the Keene House. So last time I was here, I think it was 2 years ago. Was it last year?
I think it was last year.
All right, it was last year. I'm glad it was last year. The folks here don't really need an update in terms of how everything started. I think everybody's very well versed with the importance of this house. It is really nice to be with a group of people who we don't have to make a pitch to in terms of just like, it is important to preserve history. You all are on board by being members of this organization and being so active. The efforts to preserve the Keene House generously predate me. Many people in this room were involved in the initial efforts. The initial push being the best solution would be if that house could be owned by the town and preserved in sight, in situ. When our organization got involved, it was during a time where seeming like the only idea that was possible to prevent the house from just being demolished completely was moving it. So, and even that wasn't our idea. That was an idea that kind of came from folks on the Historic Commission. I mean, it was certainly a town collaborative idea. I can't see if Carl Georgeson's here. Yes, he is. He was very instrumental in getting the ball rolling, doing all this deep research to document the importance of the house, and getting a lot of pricing and really almost finishing, handing us a finished plan in terms of what could be done with the two options of moving the house either to our owned property at the Uptuxet museums or to this property that surrounds this beautiful museum, a town-owned property that would be given to us if we were able to move it here. So we did skip a step where our organization has been pursuing those options of moving. And it has been a humbling experience for me, because as I walk into something with energy and enthusiasm and we can do it, if we just, put our backs to it, we do run into things that were more complicated. Everybody in this room probably knew before I knew how much more complicated this project was going to be to actually get that house moved off that property and safely in another spot within the budget that we had. We have the dangers of moving the house are myriad, and they are different than what we expected. We knew that we wouldn't be able to preserve every piece of it, but each house mover that we talked to talked about how the act of moving it itself is very likely, would cause a portion of it to crumble, and it is that important center fire piece that would likely not survive the move. We didn't have any of our contractors say, yeah, I think that looks good. Everybody who looked at it said, that's probably not gonna survive. Part of what that adds up to, and part of ultimately what all of these moving plans have added up to, is that it's all a lot more expensive than we thought. We did get these early estimates, which we were relying on for that final amount, the $250,000 to move it. And it's looking like to move it, even the shortest distance would take almost that full amount. Moving it to Uptuxet, we wouldn't even be able to move it for the amount allotted, and then we'd be left with a house that has no room in the budget to do any bit of preservation. And I have on my board my treasurer, who's a member of this group, who has been holding me honest in terms of the financial burden that our organization can take. And I think I was listening to a podcast about preservation where they quoted Woody Guthrie about, we want to save the world, but first we have to save ourselves. And so, my treasurer was keeping me honest about we wanna save this house, but not if it's gonna bankrupt our society. So, we are at a point now where the trip to Uptuxet, trying to move that house to Uptuxet, is both financially and logistically not possible for us to pull off. It would require having to cut down almost every other beautiful tree that goes along Uptuxet Road. Half of those are owned privately, and so getting the permissions to do that would be prohibitive. And again, the expense of getting it down there and being left with, with no money to preserve. The other little thing that snuck up and surprised us, and when I look back on it, I should have known, once a house is moved, it loses, so much of history. It has to do with place. And it's a historic home is telling us about a place. It's telling us about the people that lived there and their literal footsteps on the land. And so historic preservation money is most available for historic structures that are in their original place. And so we had some grants that were lined up to backfill for what we knew was gonna be an overage, but that we would no longer be eligible for once that house was moved. So I'm not here telling you it can't happen and it's not gonna happen, but I'm not as optimistic as I was when I spoke to you last year. Some of the other additional challenges in terms of moving to the spot that we were originally, I know last year I was here almost begging this group to sort of like, I think we can do it, will you just support it? And I expected to be, back here this year asking for a vote and asking for permission to move the house to where we thought would fit beautifully, right between this building and the next building. But now we know that due to engineering problems, a septic system, lack of parking, that area is not at all feasible to have a Keene House have its new home. And then the only other possibility would be on the other side of the Briggs-McDermott house, which has its own engineering problems because of the wetlands over there. So the challenges have been greater than we expected. And had I known then what I knew now, I probably would have started differently. And I would have started with what we are starting with now, an architectural study. So we took one step back from the moving plan, and we have asked the town and gotten the town's support for a full architectural study and memorialization of the architecture of this very important building. And so what we're looking for is we're looking to catalog the evidence of how the house was built, what tools were used, what methods were used to help us put it in its place in the pantheon of important architectural history. I'm very lucky to have a new member who brings a lot of architectural background and has helped us sort of come up with this new plan, or a new first step in a plan, and it probably should have been our first step anyway. By getting this architectural study done, this allows us to, at a minimum, document this beautiful property. And it possibly opens up the door to, if it is documented and it is as historically valuable as I think it might be, that actually might be enough to open the door for some of that historical funding to be in place where it is not now if we move it. So that's where we are. We are between now and our annual meeting, which is going to be in July 29th, things are going to move pretty rapidly. We technically can't spend the CPC money, our $14,000 or $14,500 that we got for that architectural study until July 1st. But we're working on our scope of work right now to just define what we want to get from that study. And I am, sort of optimistic and happy that we have that level of preservation that will be done. If that study can be accomplished, at least we know that the house will be thoroughly documented, and it might be thoroughly documented so that another effort could be made to move it. It might be thoroughly documented so that if it is lost to history, at least there is a historic record of it. I think that's where we
Do you have
are.
the person who's doing that documenting? Do you already have that
We-
person, or are you looking for
We're,
that?
well, we have somebody that we like and that we want to use, but we do need to put out a full scope of work and get different bids. But we do have a friend of historic preservation, a local architect who has kind of been guiding us on some of the things to ask for and has been willing to work to do this project for a very good price. The 14.5 is actually pretty low in terms of what we're gonna get from it. So I think this person's basically willing to work for free and have us pay the expenses just because this individual is, so, supportive of historic preservation.
Nice. Is that money from community preservation?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yeah.
And you can't spend it till July 1st.
Correct, yes. But we still, so we're, not charging for my time, like any of us don't, but, we're working on a scope of work so that by the time July 1st comes, we'll be ready to, just sort of hit the ground running and sort of get moving with it. It's a good test for access to the property. I mean, so far, the property owner has allowed us access, and I know that there are some projects that were happening that are on his plate, so this gives us a good test to get access as well, to see if we can kind of get in there to do this, so.
And you mentioned that you might have something for your meeting, your annual meeting?
So
Beginning
by
of first,
the time our I know it's quick, things are gonna move rapidly, but by the time our annual meeting comes through on the 29th, we probably will have made a decision about who we're going with and its potential that, we could have even started on the study, but I'll have more details of where we are with the study, because, time is of the essence, every day that the house is eligible to be knocked down anytime. There's nothing that's preventing that property owner from demolishing the house, other than maybe his own sense of historic preservation, his project isn't ready, but it, really is, we wanna get in there as quickly as we can, preserve as much as we can, and see if it opens the door for more.
Mavis,
Yes.
I appreciate all you're doing. I'm a big preservationist, as you know, but there are a lot of problems.
Mm-hmm.
But is there any possibility of saving parts of the house? And the other thing is, and everything is complicated today. You go to the store and you have 12 choices of what kind of mustard you're gonna buy. But if it's possible, excavating the land around the house, because people in old houses threw their trash at a certain place outside the back door.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know whether Vinnie would be amenable to having that excavated, because it would give a lot of information about the history of the house, of the color and the type and so on, of the pottery, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
To say what is possible.
No, that's a brilliant idea,
Again,
yeah.
I don't think it's without a lot of problems.
Yeah.
First of all, the permission of the owner.
It's definitely one of the
And I
challenges.
understand Mr. McKenzie's position, because there's liability involved.
Yep.
And, et cetera.
There's liability, it's his private property, he has the right to do with it, as he wants for his own, purposes. And I think it is remarkable that it still stands. This is an individual who's a member of our community, who has done a lot of good in our community, in terms of, development, and, it doesn't seem like he's in any rush just to knock it down, just to do it, if there's a project that is standing in the way of, his business and development, we can't be surprised if it goes. But at least there's a, possibility of some level of preservation with this study, so, yes.
Is the house empty now?
I don't think so. No, I think there are some folks living there, yes, yeah.
Yeah, the people living in it.
Yes, yeah.
We saw them unloading their stuff.
Yep. One of the special things about this house, we talk about it being, one of the oldest in Bourne, if not the oldest. It certainly is the oldest in Bourne Village, and, we're dating the building to the 1690s, and this study will get us a more exact date, which is wonderful. But it could end up being the oldest continually occupied building, if it's able to be preserved and kept going, because there have been people living there and there are still people living there. It's never, it's not an old and moldy house that's sitting unoccupied somewhere, so the presence of people is, keeping it up. The utilities are on, it's been heated in the winter. These are great questions. And anything else I can tell you?
Is there any possibility of a land swap?
Well, that's an interesting question.
Yeah, I know.
So, I'm sort of narrowly speaking about, from the perspective of the president of the Bourne Historical Society, just about this project, which had to do with moving the house and, where we are with it. But the preservation of the house didn't begin with us, and it may not end with us, and I do know that there are some, more than just folks in this room and folks in the room, when we meet at the Historical Center, care about this house. And that there are folks who are engaging in conversations and trying to organize to see if there can be another solution. Some kind of a land swap, some sort of a collaboration of different interests that would end up preserving that house in place. I mean, that would be the dream. The dream would be the absolute historic preservation in place to preserve the history, to preserve the root cellar, to preserve the footsteps, to preserve the refuse pile, which, as Beth mentioned, would be a wealth of information. If that could ever happen, certainly that's where I would get behind 100%. And, my personal opinion, I care very deeply about this house. I've spent a lot of time on it, and it has made me appreciate and love our town, the town of Bourne, and that, we get used to living here, and we live here because, for our own particular reasons, but part of why people live here and stay here is the charm and the uniqueness of this town, that we have things in Bourne that don't exist any other place, and this house is a perfect example. It's a piece of American history. It is a first period house of European development, one of the first houses, and a style that now, has been improved upon and repeated throughout, but it's very rare to find one that has not been demolished or changed so significantly that it's unrecognizable.
Mavis,
yes.
And I don't mean to bring up something that isn't pleasant, but to me, I'm such a preservationist. I am shocked that there are so many elected and appointed officials in this town who want to tear down the magnificent current Bourne Library and the current Historical Society building. And how are we going to get town support for the Keene House with many more problems, equally important, when they want to tear down many people who we've put in office, and you can look up their names. I'm not going to name names. I'm not even sure who they are, but I do know from knowing people in office that it is the most disgraceful thing I have heard of in the 60 years that I have lived in the town of Bourne. The town of Sandwich they spent millions renovating their town hall because it's important, and now they are going to get more than $2.5 million more to continue what's already almost perfect. And the town of Bourne officials want to tear down two of our most architecturally beautiful buildings in the whole town. And that's what gives us our identity, makes us an attractive town. Look at Lexington and Concord. Look at other towns in Massachusetts. And I hope most, if not all, are preserving their important buildings. And I love modern architecture, but it has its place.
Well,
Anyway, I'll be quiet.
No, I love that you said that, because I started right off saying, I don't need to preach to the choir. Everybody in this room supports historic preservation, but Beth, you have beautifully shared, some of what makes historic preservation important. That it can be an economic engine
Yes.
for, local, people visit Sandwich to walk around and go to those little shops because they're walking on those brick sidewalks, and they're, popping into the Spotted Cod, which is in an old little cute, Victorian building, and, and it's part of what drives tourism, but not just tourism, because it's for us too, because we live here, and this gives us a sense of place and where we came from and our history. And I can't believe that I've gotten to the age where I feel like kids these days, picking up a rotary phone, don't know how to use it, and so having these structures where we can walk and look and see how things are done. having this, blacksmith forge where people can actually see how it used to happen. It's the only way that these things are not gonna be lost to history. Books can, go missing, computer files can be deleted. I mean, having a structure and having people be able to walk through and tangibly witness the way, our forefathers and foremothers lived, is so important. And, I certainly, personally support preserving whenever possible. I can't speak for what's happening, the larger town. Okay, well, thank you so much for having me here, and thank you for all that you do. We each do our little part to preserve history, and, we're so appreciative for the Historical Society to have such an amazing partner organization where we can support each other and work towards the same goals. So, thank you.
You know how I feel about you, and I know if anybody can do this job, you can. And one of the things that I kept thinking of as you were speaking is, you remind me a little bit of myself when I kept speaking with passion to people who wanted no part of saving the Briggs-McDermott house, okay? But one thing I have said about Mavis, ever since the day she became president, it's been a little bit difficult for her because this was like a baptism by fire. All of a sudden, she had all these things to deal with, and she has done a remarkable job. I really think we all owe her. Thank you so much, but don't think this is easy today, because it isn't. Okay, so, does somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
No, just one comment, please. Personal privilege.
Okay.
We have something here from the Board of Selectmen, and
Oh.
Selectman Peter Meyer here is to present this to you.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that's all I know.
Congratulations, and thank you for what you've done, with this organization. But I also heard a lot of great stories from Steve Walsh over the years before he passed. Because I grew up with him on the Affordable Housing Trust as a select board's representative, and even before that. So I did, and I would tell me amazing things about this.
Did he also tell you that he would say to me, Briggs, Briggs, Briggs?
I think about him often, so.
Oh, thank you.
This is a citation that the select board is going to give you. And it's just, we heartfelt gratitude. We recognize Louise in this for your unwavering dedication to the Bourne Society for Historic Preservation. You have been a valuable contributor to the preservation of Bourne's rich heritage, demonstrating remarkable passion and wisdom. We are especially grateful for your exceptional leadership during your terms as president. We express our deepest gratitude for over a decade of extraordinary service to our town and its historical legacy. Given this 18th of June 2025 on behalf of the town of Bourne, Melissa Ferretti and Marie Sheronian, Gina Zarazis, myself, and Mary Jane Angelo, and the rest of my members send you regards.
Thank you.
But, I want to give you this.
Thank you so much. That's really
Really, thank you. I mean, I'm amazed at what this organization has done. Because I'm on the board of the society. So, I mean, I see it from a different perspective.
Now, take a look around, because these are all the people that have helped it all happen.
No, it's amazing, and I mean, I hope I have that energy when I get older.
I think.
I was citations for retiring person young, like I was 85 years old, my old 7th grade homeroom teacher, so if I get to be 85 and have that energy, and I know you're not that old.
Almost.
But seriously though, thank you very much, and I know everybody wants to have fun, so I'll keep my mouth shut and talk later. Have a good thank you, thanks for
Oh, thank you.
One more thing before we adjourn, I think Diane has something from the board as a thank you for the work that you've done.
I'm sorry, I'm just not with it. I'm just not with it today.
Thank you from all of us. And thank you for inspiring us, for leading us all these years.
With your mother.
And for putting in our heads the idea of being before the bulldozer to save the Briggs-McDermott house. I know that there are things that you won't miss, like getting up at 3 in the morning to see what's going on with the alarm.
You can say that again. I can't wait to call them and tell them I'm remove my name.
But, this is just a little thank you from the board, from our members.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, all of you. All supported.